We're still waiting for our guest. Sean hasn't logged in yet, so I'm not sure if he's having problems logging in. Really enjoyed his book. Don't call it hair metal. Hold on a second. Let me just take some of these things up. We're getting so many little things that are coming up. Oh, let me do that for you, Shan.
Sorry, I didn't even.
What the heck? Let me just take some of this stuff off. This is Sean's book. I'm not sure if he's going to come on. Usually we usually will ask someone to come on early. Oh, did you do? Oh, that's my last one.
Yes.
That's my last one.
Thank you.
But welcome everyone. Happy Friday night. If Sean comes on, we asked him to come on early so we could check things, make sure that, because last time we had John Zeka on.
Yes.
Major echo. Radio guy for 40 years.
And
you think I'd know that?
And thank you to all of you who actually said, hey, look, there's a huge echo, because we probably would have just been carried on straight for the whole time.
I don't know.
We appreciate that for sure.
Let me just try to find it for you. So people are going to come on here thinking we're doing one thing, and we're not. Look at all the videos we put out this week.
It's been busy.
This is crazy. Randy Meisner passing away. That was a shock. Sinead O'Connor. It was just crazy. So let me just see if I can grab it for you, Shan.
Thanks.
If not, we're going to have to do it on tape. Oh, here it is.
Okay.
I'll put it down for you. Oh, a whole bunch of people are on here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I have a feeling our guest is not going to be with us. I'm just seeing if he's logging in here anywhere, but he is not. So I'm going to turn this down. Got a few little controls. You know what? We bought one of these switchers. Thanks to your donations, we bought this great. It's called a Stream Deck. I haven't figured out how to use it yet. Because we're basically, I'll be here and I go, oh, the first one is a picture. And before we come on, we decide, like, for instance, don't call it hair metal. Look, it can make it big, can make it small. Oh, where's Shannon gone?
What?
Anyway, so we can just now I have to go way up here on the computer and press it. So in the next few days, we're going to do that. By the way, this weekend, and I was saying this today because I did 2 live streams today. One on the Randy Meisner interview, which is on our channel right now if you want to watch it. And the second one was friends of Randy Meisner that just said really, really nice things about him. Well, of course they did, because he was that type of guy. Richie Fiore, who was in the band Poco with Randy, posted a clip today where Randy's talking, and his voice is really, because he couldn't sing anymore. He just couldn't. He'd get older sometimes. When I interviewed Alan White of Yes, Alan, it's not his fault. Some people grow old like that. He was talking like this, like an old guy, and we had to transcribe it, but that's okay.
Rick, hey Rick, greetings from Ohio, R.I.P. Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
Hope your problems are being solved, and R.I.P. Randy Meisner.
What a week.
Fly, Eagle, fly. Please hit the like button, folks.
Yes.
Thank you, Rick. Yes, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. Helps with their
I'm
algorithm.
looking. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm looking if Sean's emailed me or anything like that. Because I thought if he'd have technical problems, he would have my information and would be able to get a hold of me. So
Brian Berkshire, good evening, groovy people.
Hi, Brian.
JD, greetings to you, John and wife Shan, me from Australia. Hey,
Yay!
JD. Ace Larson, hello, you 2 kids. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Fraser J, busy today, John. Not enough time to change into a fancy shirt. Ha ha.
That's true.
Hit that like button, folks, and support the channel.
Thought of it.
Ace Larson said, "Death comes in threes. Who's next?"
Oh, you know what? I think
God.
we notice when they're 3. Oh, hold on a second. No, that's not him. Okay. It just said, we just had to switch to the Pro Ecamm because it was saying I've been on so much.
Sean says, "Hey guys, I'm trying to log in."
Sean.
He goes, "I'm here. Hey, I don't have your email."
Okay, it's email me at John. I don't want to get my phone number. Email me at John Bowden, Beau. Actually, I'll write it down here.
Yeah.
Sean, that's great. I'm glad you're there.
Great.
Okay. Email me here and I'll send you another link. So it'd be great. I'm glad he's there.
Oh, good. I'm glad it worked out.
Where's the @ button?
Perfect. iCloud.com.
Where's .com?
Yeah, I can help you out here.
Yeah, just email me and I'll send you another link and we'll be able to get you on. Yeah.
Okay.
Just email me right away, and I'll send you an easier link.
In the meantime, Diane Smith. Hi, Diane. Happy Friday. Eric. Hi, Eric. Call It Love was great too. Lucha Libertaria. Sorry if I don't get your tag names right.
Some of the
Hello,
names.
everyone. I'm thinking of buying this book. Please do.
It's a really interesting book. A lot of great quotes, and Sean is a well-known guitarist. Played with a lot of bands. We'll give him a proper introduction in a second when he emails me, and I'll just check if he's got. Yeah, just email me and I'll send you another.
JD says, John, do you think his smoking had caused an issue?
Well, possibly. I was just mentioning last night I have a friend in New Brunswick whose wife has COPD and she continues to smoke. And at one point he had to tell her, if you want to smoke, you have to go get your own. I'm not going to go pick up cigarettes for you anymore. And, we don't have anything against people smoking. We were smokers. I smoked for a year. Shannon smoked longer than that. I just joined her smoking one day. She says, why would you start smoking in your 40s? I'm going, I'm a big St. Bernard. Anyway, so then after that, we both quit. I quit after a year. She quit. We're not against smokers. If you want to smoke, that's your prerogative. You can do it. I still smell cigarette smoke off people when I pass by them, and I go, oh, I miss smoking. I love smoking. So I don't have, hey, man, whatever floats your boat. Come on.
Sean said he just sent it. So.
Okay, good.
Melody R. Hi, Melody R. Nice to have you on. Hey, from Saskatchewan. And then Sean just said he emailed you. So
I'm just, it's refreshing now.
Excuse me.
I don't know why it's not coming on.
Hopefully it does.
Hold on, let me just check here. I have a email here, and we'll get Sean on. It'll all be good. I'm pressing buttons I'm not supposed to. Hold on, we're still on. Nope, nothing received yet. Hold on. Here he is.
WNP 67 said, Ace, there were 3. Bennett, O'Connor, and Meisner.
Oh, there were 3.
That's
I
right.
don't really believe in that kind of stuff, but that's okay. Let me send Sean an invite. We'll get him on. It'll be easy. Easy peasy. There we go. There we go. Sean, I'm sending it to you now. We'll get you on. After years in radio, little things like this don't really affect us too much. I was doing the morning show here in Calgary. One of the things that we had to do is there was always something going on. So we decide usually, and my cohorts hated that. We would decide at the last minute what topic we were going to talk about. And they go, come on, we have to prepare more than that. I'm going, yeah, not really. Let's just see how we are at the 5 or, just kind of get it done. Sean, I just sent it to you. So when you get on, I can figure out how to put you on. I have never done it off, but he'll come on right away.
Eric says, I submit that Troy was the greatest Sinead O'Connor tune of all time.
I like the Blood of Eden when she sang in the background for Peter Gabriel. There was some. Oh, here we go.
Oh,
Sean, that was quick. Okay, Sean, hold on. Let me share. We'll share the screen with you. Just give me a sec. Hold on, I have to figure this out here. Just give me a second. There we go. Nope, wrong way. Hey, man, how are you? We have to put this on so we can hear him.
Okay.
Wrong way. That's yours.
Thanks.
It's like
I remember doing that in high school.
Hey, there you are. We're sharing
I've been
headphones.
Here for a minute. I've been here for a hot minute, and
a hot minute. Hold on, let me put it.
I can barely hear.
I was waiting in the lounge, and I just thought, I thought maybe we were making a dramatic entrance.
No, hold on. You're there. Can you hear him okay now?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
What are you guys listening to?
We're listening to. Hey, back off, Boogaloo. Okay, he's finally on. This guy's. I just found out tonight you're an educator too.
I am, yeah.
We're going to get to that in a second. Okay, guitarist Sean Kelly. A lot of folks will know him from Crash Kelly. Nelly Furtado, Coney Hatch. You're playing with my friends in Coney Hatch. Andy Curran, good guy. Tell you that.
Great guy. All great.
Lee Aaron, Helix. Honeymoon Suite. Talk to the guys in Honeymoon Suite. They're really cool. And you've got this unbelievable book. I mean, listen, You're a great writer. You've got it. Oh, we're all stuck here.
I think you're like
This
the other ear now.
really, really well done, and
Thank you.
come from a moment of you were telling another interviewer I saw tonight that when you started, you were buying all the poppy stuff. You were buying the 45s. What the
Yeah.
point? Were you saying the Pointer Sisters?
Yeah, the Pointer Sisters. It's funny. I'm talking to you from my childhood home in North Bay. I came up to visit my mom, and I remember sitting in this living room listening to that 45 of "Jump for My Love," not "Jump" by Van Halen, but "Jump for My Love" by the Pointer Sisters, and thinking that was just the greatest. Like that was my first purchase with my own money.
It's strange the follow your nose process that we all have, and we've all had it where, you know, I've got a wall downstairs of my childhood wall downstairs. And all those people that are on there, I'll show you. Look at this. All those people that are on there, this is in black light paint. It's in my
Okay, right
garage.
on.
But everyone that look, there's ABBA, BTO,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin on the bottom. There's everything on there. But there comes a point where you start seeing the lane that's more favorable. That moves you. You can't help it. No one can tell you to like or not like something. So
Yeah.
from that, how did that change for you? Who was giving you? Where were you hearing your music to find out where your lane was?
Well, I think, I've always had kind of an adrenal connection to music, right? Like I always kind of gravitated towards things that just got me excited, right? Got the adrenaline rush going. So, Pointer Sisters, that makes sense. Laura Branigan, Gloria, that makes sense. Then I hear Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll. Okay, that really makes sense. But really, when I started hearing things like Quiet Riot, Def Leppard, Pyromania, and then ultimately Twisted Sister, that's when everything clicked. It was those pop melodies, up tempo tunes, but really it was the electric guitar. And once I heard those things in combination, I was hooked, and I've been hooked for 40 plus years.
When did that turn into you playing guitar?
Well, I mean, I had a guitar and jumped around in front of a mirror for a good year before I actually played the thing. But that's all part of the training. That is part of the training. And I guess I found a receipt for the first guitar my dad bought me at a pawn shop, and it was 1984. So it was Christmas '84. I got my first guitar.
A lot of the music you talk about in the book.
Yeah.
I would, and I heard another interviewer talk about this where he said, "Well, it was hair metal, but you can call it what you want. But when people put a tag on something, there's always someone putting another tag on, and after a while, as you had mentioned before, these tags came on sometimes after this music had become a hit.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for you to write the book? Let's start there."
Well, this music has meant so much to me, and I've followed not only the music I grew up with, but the art that was continued to be made by these artists throughout their career, right? Like I talk about in the book about some very important things that happened, and how the music of band Mr. Big was part of the soundtrack to a very important life process for me. And when I hear or see these artists being relegated to one song or one video or one image caught in time, I don't think it does justice to their overall lifelong, ambitions, right? Or intentions. And I have found that, as a professional musician myself, often if I bring these artists, the commercial hard rock artists of the 80s up as an influence or as an artistic inspiration, it's met with derision sometimes. Like, I don't want that cheesy hair metal stuff, But if I would have said, instead of referencing Cinderella, I would have said, oh, check this out. It's kind of like an Aerosmith type vibe. People would go, very cool. Or Led Zeppelin, they get a pass. AC/DC gets a pass. Cinderella doesn't get a pass all the time. But but really, this was what inspired me. And I was trying to draw a connection between the music that I grew up listening to and it's so important to me and the great rock and roll lineage that it actually came from. And, it's part of the overarching, tapestry of rock and roll in general. So to me, hair metal, even the term hair metal, you're putting the image before the music, literally. And I don't think it does necessarily justice to what these people were trying to do, which is really create great rock and roll. The best of it should be considered amongst the best rock and roll.
Shannon, you come in whenever there's a pertinent. Whenever we have guests on, there's always a lot of questions, but sometimes they're not aimed at our guest.
Actually, I have one from they Celine 786. Okay, now they say not that I'm a huge metal fan, but why does the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame continue to diss the metal bands?
It's a good question.
Yeah, you know what? I think that there is, like anything, there's a group of specific tastemakers that sit in that hall and make choices based on, their preferences. Some might say their inherent bias. I would be one. But, whatever, it's slowly but surely you're starting to see these people have to recognize. Look at Rush. How long did it take Rush to get in there? But ultimately, heavy metal was music for the people, for the fans, and the fans are speaking, and they're speaking in a great volume. And at the end of the day, you have to kind of recognize that you start to look silly, right? Like, I mean, at some point, it doesn't make sense to ignore these bands who have obviously influenced, like Kiss, for example. How can you say, Rolling Stone magazine, the Rock Hall hates Kiss. They hate them. But how can you deny it when half the bands that you've installed in that hall are vocally inspired by Kiss? Never mind the commercial success, never mind the the cultural impact, just the sheer weight of influence. And heavy metal has influenced so much of the great rock and roll that's come after.
I just put your book up there. I'm going, yeah, we should maybe have it superimposed. Dee Snider, high praise for Dee Snider. We know I just talked to Stuart Epps, who had worked with Jimmy Page on Death
Great
Wish
engineer.
2. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I talked to him, and all of a sudden he didn't know they were coming for, I think, their second album. I forget, don't quote me. But anyway, he came in, and they're knocking on the door, and he's working on something else. And when they walk in, he says, "There's these big guys with the big hair," and Stuart comes from the old crew, but he says they were touching all the buttons, they were touching the drums. Hey, John Bonham play here, and because he was dead by then, he had passed on. Yeah. But he said one thing about Dee and the rest of the guys. He said their persona as he's walking through London, even though they looked a certain part, because there's always that stuff that you get from anybody with hair. You probably still get it, but when I had long hair, I got it. But he said that the guys in Twisted Sister were like totally different than they were. It's like they used to say this about Wolfman Jack, that was a thing, and they were not that in real life. And why would you think they are? That's part of the act. What was your impression of Dee Snider, and how long have you known him?
Well, I mean, Dee Snider's the reason I play music, really. Like, it was hearing We're Not Gonna Take It. That's when I knew I had to have a guitar. So I feel like I've known him for a long time, but I came to personally know him when I worked in 2015. I went and auditioned for his Dee Snider's Rock and Roll Christmas Tale, which was a holiday musical that he brought to Toronto. And I auditioned and actually landed a role. I thought I was just going to play guitar in the pit, but it was actually an acting role. I had to learn to act, dance, and I was singing, and it was a major role in the performance. Best experience of my life. One of the best professional experiences of my life, for sure. And Dee Snider is a fiercely intelligent human being. But it's funny. I do see the parallels between his performance acumen and his personality. That guy is on 10. It is intense all the time. He eats a Timbit with heavy metal intensity. The guy's in great shape, but
he's Canadian. He's Canadian.
Yes, and with passion and fervor. I mean, just follow him on Twitter. You're going to get the bare truth. You're going to get his real opinion coming at you at high velocity. And I will tell you this: the first time I ever got on stage with him, before I saw he was on stage, I felt like what was like a lightning bolt shoot through me. And I said, "What's going on?" And it was Dee approaching the stage. There is no front man that has that type of intensity. Front man, front woman. I played with a lot of the greats, and he is probably the greatest front man I've ever seen in my life. And absolute volatile, incredible energy, and he brings that to everything he does.
Do you have some questions?
I have Lucha says, question for Sean: is this book North America oriented? Because in Europe, South America, and Japan, hard and heavy continue to be popular. And no,
Uh,
none of it was called hair metal.
what's that?
And none
What
of
was
it
the
was
last
called,
part?
and none was called hair metal.
Yeah, that's right. No, you know what? It is. I guess predominantly we speak about North American bands, but I talk a lot about the German and British influence when that music started to come to LA and influence the LA scene. That was really important, right? You had like 70s glam from the UK. You had the new wave of British heavy metal. You had German bands like Accept and Scorpions who were starting to make inroads. And all that sort of coalesced in the 1983 US Festival when you had, Quiet Riot, where Metal Health had just come out. Shout at the Devil was just about to come out. You have Motley Crue. You have the Scorpions. You have Triumph. You have Judas Priest. You have Ozzy. And then you have Van Halen. So really, that's when the day heavy metal took over, right? And really was the day we started to see the change where it became the popular youth music of the time. So I do talk about different bands for sure. It's funny. I'm a big fan. We're talking about Japan of the band Loudness. I talk a little bit about Akira Takasaki. I actually just bought 2 guitars from a little music store in Shibuya because you couldn't get them. They weren't marketed in Canada, but I always wanted guitars like Akira Takasaki. So now I've got both of the guitars I wanted when I was a kid. And I actually just used them on the new album that I'm recording to go along with the book.
So you had mentioned in another interview I talked to you, because one of the things when I talk to someone for the first time, my big thing as a broadcaster is I always go, I got to see the guy, got to see his face. I don't what. Then I'm like, I know this guy, of course. But like you were mentioning, the Crash Kelly stuff is going to be available again.
I'm in the process. Yeah. Well, Crash Kelly was a band that was active, basically from 2003 through to like 2010, say. And we had signed a recording contract with a label called Century Media out of the States. They had an imprint called Liquor and Poker Music that was starting to be, back in around 2003, 2004, the darkness was coming out. It seemed like there was going to be this big renaissance of this type of music. It felt like it. And it felt like there was a big surge. Didn't quite happen the way we all wanted it to, but we were lucky enough to get a deal, and we went out and we did a North American tour with Alice Cooper and put out 3 albums in Japan as well. All albums were released by Universal in Japan. And I'm getting the rights. The rights to those records technically have reverted back to me. So I'm actually talking with my former managers, Chris and Rebecca Case, and we're having a lot of fun with it. We're gonna get those records back and repackage them and we've got a few label partners that we're talking about potentially working with and just having fun with it. So
it's full circle.
Yeah, you know what? It was Crash Kelly never sold a lot of records, but we had a little cult following, and we had a lot of attention. We were signed to an LA label, so we went to LA a lot and were able to play and have people come out and see us. And we did a couple of UK tours that did really well for us. So we have a lot of friends. I don't think we have a lot of fans, but we have a lot of friends. So this is kind of to reconnect with those friends. And, like anything, I've had the good fortune to work with a lot of artists who are much more popular than I ever was.
But a lot of artists.
Yeah,
you got to do the work to get in the room, man, and that's why I applaud you. That's the thing. I mean, there's a little luck involved in, but my cliche term, and I talk to the rockers that are 10 years older than me who were on the radio in the 70s and the 80s and sometimes the 60s. But they're all they remember what we were saying. We were in backstage with Tony Bennett, and he's going, "Was the sound okay? Was everything okay?" But I get that in rockers. We're getting that in rockers of going, "No, did you like the new album?" I'm going, "What the?" If I'd be Justin Bieber, I'd be dead. I would have died in that situation. Fame wouldn't have been good for me. So you take it, sir. You deserve it.
Well, thank you. But you know what? None of us gets into music because we have screaming self-confidence. You don't get up and jump around, in spandex pants because you're feeling ultra secure in yourself. Or maybe you are. I don't know. But I think that's a part of it, right? Like, I mean, you're putting something out there for public consumption that's very personal, right? And you want it to come across in the best possible light. So I totally get it, and trust me, on the inverse, when I've gone to see great artists that I love, I'm always surprised when they have a different view of themselves, when I have them up on a pedestal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I get that all the time, too. I'm backstage ready to introduce the band, and I'm going, remember the time when like the Chris Farley McCartney thing?
Yeah.
So you gotta.
I do. A question again from Lucha for you, Sean. Do you talk about social culture, about glam metal? In the 80s, glam image was a reaction against the clean cut kind of moral majority, the yuppie culture. Do you talk much about the social culture, about glam metal?
I do. In fact, with a lot of personal reference, because in a way, it really was going in the face of my own cultural upbringing, right? You know, I'm a Roman Catholic, Northern Ontario boy raised in a hockey playing family, right? Like, I mean, all of a sudden I want to wear my sister's clothes and makeup, you know? This is concerning for the parental units. All of a sudden, remember the satanic panic of the 80s.
Oh,
Oh
I mean,
man.
I'm an altar boy, and I've got Blackie Lawless drinking blood from a skull on my wall. You know, that's concerning.
It happens.
You know, I've got my mom reading the lyrics to "Talk Dirty to Me" back to me, and then smashing the record. These are concerning things, and I get it as a parent now. I get it, right? So I talk about that. I do talk about it, like, you know, but it's funny. As much as that music was a rebellion against what we consider to be conservative mores, really, it's the music of the Reagan era. It's ultra individualistic. It's actually ultra conservative in a way. You know, it kind of speaks to this ultimate individualistic freedom, right? So it's a fascinating dichotomy. I do also talk a lot about the role of women, you know, and how women were portrayed lyrically. I speak with, you know, I play with the great Lee Aaron, and she offered some wonderful insight as a female performer in that time, and the sexism she faced, and you know, like she's a real pioneer in so much as she had to go against, you know, half of her. I remember reading articles, and you know, before they even got to the music, you had to go through all this BS about image and look and like, oh, and for a girl, she can really sing. It's like, yeah, she can sing. She can out-sing any of these jokers. Yeah, she's amazing. She's an amazing musician. Yeah. So, you know, I do talk about that and how I had to, you know, as an adult, how do you reconcile listening to lyrics that are blatantly sexist, overtly offensive, right? And separating the music from the lyric. And it involves a certain amount of responsibility, right? I mean, I think so anyway.
Well, wasn't it? I look at that. I mean, you know, I'm a woke type of dude, but at the same time, I'll tell you, I'm going through 40 years of radio interviews. I've been in radio since 1983, so I'm going through these interviews, and as I'm listening to them, they're all reel to reel. We've had to bake them in a food dehydrator and put them in. And listen to them real time as we put them in. I'm listening to a lot of these guys that are kind of my heroes, but I won't say who it was. Someone mentions a native, a music school that had a native title to it. It's in Canada. It's not called that anymore. So the guy flippantly just does a racial slur, but it was a very mild thing. And I'm going, yeah, back then people did that. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to my friend Steve Burgess. He gave me his interviews. And there's a part of me of going, well, yeah, but that's kind of a when in Rome sort of, that was part of the time. We know better now. There is, and I'm not talking about women. You know, there's a part of that of going, more than just whataboutism of going, well, that guy's doing it. But it was part of what, you know, it was, people were just doing that.
Well, here's my take on that. I agree, because I think I don't think you can necessarily cast aspersions on people. Yeah, you do have to consider what was happening culturally at the time, but it's an opportunity to look back on it, grow from it, not do it again. If it's like, really, when people talk about, oh, everyone's offended. Well, listen, what's your goal? Is your goal to keep on offending people? Or is it to stop hurting people? Like, really, that's the people who are oppressed. They just want to stop being oppressed. They don't necessarily, they're not the ones who want to go back and rewrite history. They just want to kind of say, hey, stop hurting me. Can we stop this attitude that's hurting me? Like, it's that simple. And rather than, you know, try and think of, romanticize a good old day that never was for some people, learn from it. It doesn't mean you're a bad person now. It means maybe looking at it through the prism of what we know now, maybe those weren't the best choices then. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't think you have to stop listening to something or you know, paint a broad picture of somebody based on something they said in a certain period of time either, right? Like, I mean, so I think I tend to agree with you. Like, I mean, yeah, people did say something. Like, I mean, when we're talking about First Nations people, I mean, there were different, they identified in different ways, right? Like, I mean, I remember playing the what they called the Native American Music Awards with Nelly Furtado in the United States, and many people identified as Indian there. You know, wasn't my place to tell them what to identify, but at the same time, it's not my place to say anything. I listen to people, and I think that's what we should all do. Let's listen to what people are saying they want.
What changes minds? Information. That doesn't work with all people these days, but it should. What's changed my mind for almost everything? I would get more information. I'd go, oh, okay, now I'm a more rounded, as you should be as you get older, a more rounded human being, more balanced.
The only problem I would say with that is we have to consider where we get our information from, because now we have the dissemination mechanism where we can disseminate information that hasn't been proven. You know, we used to put things to scientific tests.
Scientists. I remember that. Scientists.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily have to do that anymore. You can have an outlier who comes out with a well publicized opinion, and that can become truth for somebody. And when that's politicized, that's dangerous. And that goes on all sides of the political spectrum. But I think that's another conversation.
But speaking of that, as an educator, though, I mean, you were that kid once, and now you're teaching that kid. What's your take on, as an educator? We'll get back to the book in a second. What's happening with the kids from your point of view?
Well, I mean, it's funny. The kids today, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could take that question. I could take it. Let's talk about lyrical content. What I try to do as an educator, I have to be respectful of the wishes of the parents, the rules of the school board in which I teach in. But I'm also an artist, right? So what I try to do is I try to encourage kids to listen, that you can enjoy music that maybe has lyrics that are questionable. You don't have to take on the lyrics yourself as a lifestyle choice, but you should be able to disseminate what makes sense to you, what feels good to you based on the upbringing that you've had. What do your parents say? What do your teachers say? What are you learning? How does this make you feel? How do you think this makes other people feel when you apply the things that are happening in the lyrics that are happening in these songs? So I think my goal is to help people become a discerning listener, both musically, lyrically, and understand that there are going to be different environments where certain things are appropriate and certain things are not. The music that you're going to go listen to with your friends back at your house is maybe different than the music you're going to listen to with Mr. Kelly in the music room, because it's just not the appropriate environment. And Mr. Kelly's going to go do that too, by the way. Like, I remember I was doing the Rock of Ages musical here in Toronto, and there's definitely some grown-up themes in there. And I know parents were bringing their kids, right? And I was like, okay, well, you're hearing some things and you're seeing some things in a different environment that your teacher's involved in. But that's okay, because we're being discerning. Parents are here. You can have discussions about it. I think that's healthy. So that's what I try and do. I try to help develop discerning listeners.
One of my favorite words is discerning, by the way. Just thought I'd mention it. Lee Aaron, I still work for Chum, which is Bell Media now. I've been working for them since 1990, but we were trying to get a radio station in Vancouver, and Lee was doing the jazz thing at that point. We're applying for a jazz station. So I called her up, and she couldn't endorse our application. She was endorsing it doesn't matter, standard, I think. And she gave me the nicest, I'm sorry I can't help you, that I've ever heard in my life. Like, I remember thinking, and I've been in radio a long time at that point, I realized there's a persona and there's other people, but one thing I know, backstage, almost everyone's nice. If maybe nervous sometimes before the show, which is normal, but she was just the nicest. I forget her real first name, but it doesn't matter. She told me what it was. And it's just, there's something golden about the girl. I remember I got off the phone going, what a nice human being. Jeez, that's the best rejection I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, she is a wonderful human being.
Lee Aaron to you is?
Lee Aaron to me is my sister, my friend, somebody I admire as a human being first and foremost, but also one of the greatest musicians I've had the pleasure to work with. World class talent. Um, she's a singer, songwriter, producer. I know her as a great mother to her kids, great husband, a great a wife to her husband John, who's our drummer. I've had over the last almost 10 years of working with her, the chance to really get to know her, and it's been a pleasure.
Her husband's John Cody, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I know the other John Cody. There's a singer songwriter from.
That's right.
I remember looking John up before I'd actually met him, and I'm going, he's not a drummer. Hey, but this is a common name, right? So,
Yeah.
where can people get this book?
Anywhere you get your books. I'm with ECW Press, and they've done an amazing job. So all the major book chains, all the major online retailers. I always encourage people, if they have a local bookstore, to go and grab it there. Just, because, it's important to support our local independent bookstores. But yeah, you can get anywhere. And you can even, if you want a signed copy, we have them through my merch store at rockpapermerch.com. Look in the Sean Kelly store, and you get a little guitar pick with it.
I will put that in the description. I will put that in the description after, because that's. By the way, what happened with the hockey gene? I need answers.
Well, you know what? I don't know, but it skated right around me. I'll tell you that. I did not have that skill set. I loved playing hockey, but it rapidly became clear to me that I did not want that puck bad enough to keep getting my head drilled in the ice. And as my hair got longer, I became a target for the goons out there. I said, well, I don't know. Poor Ron Duguay. I don't know how he does it, but I think I'm gonna. I actually remember I quit in the middle of a game. I played up till I was 17. I think I was playing like midget or something, and some guy had just drilled me on the ice, and I'm like picking myself up, and I got some coach yelling at me. I said, I'm at the point now where none of these guys are making it. We are now where dreams go to die. So I think I'm going to go practice my guitar. I'm going to go learn an Yngwie Malmsteen lick instead of listening to this joker yell at me. So I walked off the ice, and that was the end of that. Best thing I ever did.
I know that writing a book is an arduous task. I know that. I mean, I quote Don Henley all the time saying, and we just lost Randy a day and a half ago.
Yeah.
That was sad. But Don got on stage when he was doing the 80th special, I think for Inside Job. I'm not sure what album it was. He says, getting one of these things from start to finish done, an album in this case, he says, no one knows. And yet, unless you've done it, no one knows. And you've done it. But a book, the artists that I talk to, and they're all writing books, they're so surprised. Even some of them, I know you don't have a ghostwriter on this, but a lot of these guys do. And they just say, man, it's one hell of a task. But is there another book? What was the process like for you? And is there another book in your future? We'll get to that in a second.
Well, this is my second book, right? My first book actually came out 10 years ago. The process is an arduous one. And this one was particularly arduous because I wrote a majority of it before I talked to anybody. I just was getting all of this stuff that's been circulating my head out. So it took a while.
But it was was it quasi-formulated a little bit? There must have been a semblance of what you wanted to do, obviously.
Well, yeah, I did have it in the way I knew I wanted to break it down into 2-year chunks, right? I knew I wanted to trace the evolution of the music and my evolution as a listener over, a period of 2-year chunks, right? So from the roots in the kind of 78 to 80 up through just past 90, 91. That's kind of what I dove into. So that gave me a template, a chapter outline that I worked around. And then it was just kind of filling in the blanks and writing about what I felt, doing a lot of listening, a lot of analysis, which brought me back to the time and place in which I kind of became introduced to this music. And then then I went in and started asking questions and talking to the people who were actually making it, creating it, or were around it, right? Managers, I talked to Alan Niven, the manager of Guns N' Roses. That was very illuminating. Talked to Rudy Sarzo, who had played with Ozzy Osbourne, Quiet Riot, Whitesnake, Dio. He had been through, all those eras with different artists. So it was having some ideas challenged and it was having other ideas confirmed. And that's the best part about writing a book, right?
Yeah.
You learn something new, or you confirm something that you always believed and you heard it from the horse's mouth. And that felt good too. And sometimes it didn't feel so good to have things I thought were true, highlighted as
That
being
happens to
not so
me.
true.
Yeah,
And
that
and
happens to
it's
me
not,
all the time.
yeah, a little bit of innocence dies with you, right? But
Yeah.
that's okay. But that's part of self-reflection and growth, right? So anyway, I do have another book, and in fact, I'm just in the process of getting my book deal together for the new book. I was just talking to my editor. I will be writing another book for ECW, and I don't want to say too much, but it's
Is in a similar lane? It must be in a similar lane.
yeah. Listen, man, I'm not gonna. You're not gonna get any great philosophy books out of me or any World War II history, but you will get rock and roll, and it's going to follow in the same vein. If you're a guitar player, I think you're going to find it very interesting. Or if you're a fan of guitar players or guitars, I hope you're going to find it interesting.
Well, cool. You want to say hi to someone there?
Yeah, thank you, Maddie K USA. Thank you for your donation to our channel. She says for me, or he says for me, music was an education that was otherwise unavailable in those days, at least back in the 60s to the 80s. It is invaluable. Cheers. So she just commented.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, and I think that's true. I mean, what did Springsteen say? I learned more from a 3-minute, 33-second record than I ever learned in school. I always thought that was a great lyric.
We just put up a clip of Chris Thompson telling me how much Bruce Springsteen hates the Man for Men's version of "Blinded by the Light," and he says, "I'm seeing him next week." But he said, "Well, what do you think of our version of Blinded by the Light?" And he said, "Well, I like that other one you guys did." And he will never talk about this. But Rick Emmett, by the way. Rick Emmett is probably the gentleman that I have talked to most in my career. Because when I was doing jazz radio, he was doing jazz.
Right.
And before that, I was a rock guy, and he was, at that time, still in Triumph. But, Rick, and I'll ask you about your encounter, but Rick told me Rusty Young of Poco had died. And I'm asking, Richie Fiore, where's Rusty? I'm just kind of curious, philosophical. Where do we go when we die? So I started asking everybody this question. I come up to Rick, and Rick's great. Rick says, we're dead. I said, well, what happened? No, we're in the ether. It's gone. I said, well, have you ever had a religious, everything ever happened? Because it's sobering to listen to someone with a totally, just black and white answer to it. I'm going, I got off the interview, came downstairs, Shannon's going, I got to talk to guys like Rick more often. Because, you can talk to, when I was in New Age, everyone I was talking to was phooey. Well, you can't just talk to people who are pie in the sky. But what about you and Rick?
Well, I mean, Rick Emmett, he's like a moral compass for guitar players, right? Because what would Rick Emmett do here? He's constantly he has true artistic intention, right? He's driven almost purely by his artistic impetus, which is fascinating to me. He's a guy I don't even want to put words in his mouth because he's so articulate. I love the perspective he gave me in the book because he kind of was one of those guys who said, well, you're looking at me through the prism in which you know me, but Triumph had a career before that where we were Gentle Giant and progressive rock. And from your perspective, you've got us in with Twisted Sister and Quiet Riot and the US Festival and Motley Crue, right? And he was right. Like I came to Triumph, after Thunder 7, right? Where it was Follow Your Heart. It was the big arena rock. But really, Rick was coming from a different place. And really, Triumph was the vehicle in which he could be an artist on the world stage. And we saw it wasn't long after where he started to move into, as a solo artist, in the poppier kind of realms. And then ultimately, jazz and Rick's a fantastic educator. I knew Rick as much as an educator from his column in Guitar Player magazine as I did from his music, So he was always someone I looked to when I began studying classical guitar, along with Randy Rhoads, as somebody who, was taking inspiration from other genres, and it was informing his rock music. And I always thought that was cool. And I used to love reading, I think one of the great quotes I remember from a guitar magazine, he said, I get to play classical music that hundreds of thousands of people buy. Real classical players don't get to do that. And I went, I like that. I want to be like that guy. I thought that was really cool. So I have nothing but respect for Rick's talent, and he's a wonderful, warm, engaging, intellectual guy who doesn't pull any punches, and that's refreshing in this day and age. You get the real truth from him, right? He's an honest man.
You mentioned Gentle Giant a while ago. I interviewed Derek Shulman a little while ago, and then he's like, all these prog guys. When you interview these prog guys, I always tell them, I said, proggers, if you make one mistake with a progger, I don't know if metal guys are like that. One mistake, they're only going to kick you out of the group because, come on, you should know that. But proggers are a different brand. Did you ever delve into like the prog stuff? You mentioned classical music, so a lot of proggers like classical music. Some do.
Well, it's funny. I think with the Northern Ontario thing, I think you have to know some Max Webster tunes by birthright to be from Northern Ontario. Kim Mitchell is responsible for bringing art rock music to Northern Ontario. I'm convinced of that. That's the only band where you can look like that and sound like that, and everyone in the bar wants to listen to it. So he was bringing kind of that Zappa thing, the Jean-Luc Ponty thing into rock music that was digestible for rock audiences, right? And Rush, once again, that was like a badge of honor if you could play Rush songs in your basement with your friends, but I always looked at all the progressive stuff through a rock prism. Everything I look at is through a rock and roll prism. So it had to have some element of that in there for me. I loved listening to Yes. I was impressed by it, but I always did gravitate towards shorter song structures. So, Derek Shulman, his influence on me was far more as an A&R man than as a musician. Derek Bon Jovi, Cinderella, so really that's where Derek Shulman kind of really influenced my life in his good business decisions, bringing those bands to my.
You know what? I interviewed him when he was in a doctor's office. And then he said, we have to do it again. I'm going, we can't tell it's a doctor's office. And he says, no, my doctor told me I can't do it. And I said, that's fine. So we did the entire interview again because he was enjoying himself. And I'd forgotten because he looks like a suit. He really does. He's a very manicured guy. And you forget he was that wild, crazy frontman for this band that really never got their due. But that's music. Never got their due. By the way, I'll tell you one last thing before we leave. Bill Simzik, who produced the Eagles, of course, after On the Border, I asked him, who do you wish you would have worked with? And you may know this or may not know it. He says, I wish I would have worked with Rush. I'm going, what?
Wow.
What? Rush, the Eagles producer? He's done a lot more than the Eagles, but he said, I said, well, why? Why would you give me that answer? He said, well, I know you mean it, but he said, because I wanted to work with three of the greatest musicians in the world.
Wow. It's amazing.
When's the next book coming out?
Well, you know what? I'm not sure. I'm going to try and get it out. Last book took me almost 2 years to write. I think I'm going to take the lessons I've learned and try and truncate that. So hopefully within the next year and a bit. But, I'm going to give myself a little artistic license if I need it. Because, you don't finish a book, you abandon it. That's the way I look at it. You abandon it and it rips your heart out and you gnash your teeth and weep outside the walls of the book publisher as you hand over your baby to them. But what are you going to do? Eventually you got to put it out there, right?
Musically, the last question, what's coming up for you?
Well, lots. There's a new Coney Hatch live album coming out that we recorded in Germany called Postcard from Germany, a new single called It's About a Girl that's out now. Working on, I can say this now, a new recording project for Lee Aaron that's going to come out early new year. And we're touring the Elevate record, which came out late last year. I'm working on a new Crash Kelly record to go along with the book where I'm doing my version of some of these classic 80s hard rock songs. And that's just been a joy. So that's fun. And a couple of people interested in putting that out, which is exciting. And, and then, I've got some gigs coming up with Alan Frew from Glass Tiger. I play once in a while with my good friend Carol Pope from Rough Trade.
You've worked with her, yeah.
Yeah. So, whoever calls, I'm always anxious to make good music with good people.
We'd love to have you back. This has been truly enjoyable. Love the book.
Yes,
highly recommend it.
You.
We're going to put some links after we get off so people can grab it. And thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, pleasure. I'm so glad it all worked out. We beat the tech demons and we made it happen. So
that was my fault. Take care. Take care, everybody.
Man, all good.